What purpose does the gentleman from Missouri rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 3944, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection, pursuant to House Resolution 530 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 3944. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, to preside over the Committee of the Whole. Thanks, sir.
All right, that's a lot there.
Okay.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 3944, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee of Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I am honored to present the Fiscal Year 26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations bills to the House today. This bill supports our troops, it supports their families, and it supports our nation's veterans. The bill includes nearly $18 billion for military construction efforts. It is critical that our service members and their families have the infrastructure and support they need. This bill delivers to construct and improve military housing, child care centers, and other quality of life components that are so important to those who risk so much. This bill continues to build on investments that strengthens our national security through the construction of modern infrastructure and improvements to critical quality of life facilities for our service members and their families. Additionally, we continue to provide significant funding to build upon prior year's work to enable the Department of Defense to meet the challenges in the Indo-Pacific. The bill honors our commitment to our nation's veterans and to our troops. To honor that commitment, the bill provides full funding for health care and benefits for veterans. Our veterans have earned these benefits, and we are making good on our promises to them. That includes fully funding our commitment to the PACT Act. The bill continues robust investments in our women's health, rural health, veterans' homelessness issues, and mental health. The legislation maintains all the funding for medical and prosthetic research. It increases funding for VA infrastructure and supports Arlington National Cemetery. It invests in the improvement, operations, and maintenance of burial grounds for those who have sacrificed. I'd like to thank Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz. I am glad we are at this step in the process and hope that we continue to work together to support our troops and our veterans. Everyone, Mr. Chair, should understand that this bill cares for our veterans, it supports our troops and their families, and keeps the promises that we have made to our heroes. Mr. Chair, I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3944, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. And I unfortunately could not possibly disagree with my friend, Mr. Alford from Missouri, more on the description of this bill, which is why I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3944, the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies bill. While I unfortunately cannot support the bill on the floor today, I will say in Chairman Carter's absence that I am thankful and appreciative of the work that we've been able to accomplish together over the years on this subcommittee. I know he and I both prioritize quality of life for our service members and their families and caring for our veterans. Unfortunately, this bill hurdles us towards VA privatization, a top Project 2025 priority that undercuts what veterans consistently ask us for here in Congress. They want high-quality medical care at VA, not privatized care that takes longer to receive. By transferring record funding from VA medical services to community care, which is a 67% increase of $14 billion, this bill pushes veterans into private care, even though veteran polls and studies show that when given the option, veterans prefer to receive their medical care at the VA. In 2024, veteran trust in VA healthcare rose to a record 92%, and we should build on this success, not kick veterans to an already crowded private market. Now, I understand that there is a need for community care, especially for veterans in rural areas, and specialty care when necessary, and when appointments at the VA are scarce. However, countless studies show that when veterans seek care at private hospitals and clinics, they wait longer to see providers, and they get worse care. They know VA medical professionals choose this work due to their mission to care for our veterans, and that's something the private sector simply cannot replicate. We should invest more in VA provider recruitment and retention incentives, increase benefits counselors and adjudicators, not ignore veterans' wishes and speed recklessly into privatization. On the military construction side, this bill underfunds military construction by $904 million compared to the President's budget request, and fails to fund some specific needs like installation resilience and NATO infrastructure commitments. As Russia continues to wage an illegal war in Ukraine and threaten Europe, we should be sending a clear sign that we stand with our NATO allies, allies who stood by us for decades. And we are talking about infrastructure for our troops that are over there, as well as our allies' troops. We all know that global warming temperatures are having a devastating impact on our military installations, including sea level rise, recurrent flooding, hurricanes, and extreme weather, as well as extreme heat and drought. Yet this bill includes zero dedicated funding to mitigate this extreme weather damage to our installations and force readiness. We've seen time and again what devastating extreme weather can do to installations. In 2018, Hurricane Michael mauled Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, my home state, and cost the Air Force $4.9 billion to rebuild. And when Typhoon Marwar ran through Guam and devastated the island, this Congress provided almost $1.8 billion to begin recovering from the damage. Unfortunately, we know that future need from Typhoon Marwar will cost many billions more. Finally, this bill includes a plethora of harmful poison pill riders. It once again prohibits the VA from implementing its interim final rule to protect a woman's right to an abortion and counseling. The message sent on that is clear. Republicans want to further limit women's access to health care. Never mind if an abortion is in the best medical interest of the veteran between her and her doctor. Disturbingly, Republicans think you should only have access to abortion if you're dying. So this bill has the government making personal medical decisions for veterans, not their doctor or the veteran themselves. It's a cruel and ironic way to treat those who fight for our freedoms by taking them away. This bill also undermines VA's ability to keep at-risk veterans safe by preventing VA from reporting a beneficiary to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This rider prohibits VA from following federal law to keep guns out of the hands of people who federal law says should not have them because they are a danger to themselves or others. My subcommittee receives notifications every time there's a suicide on VA property. Over the last year, Mr. Chairman, we received suicide notices from Asheville, Los Angeles, McAllen, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, South Texas, Puget Sound, and many, many more. Every single veteran committed suicide with a firearm. Every single one. With all of these serious concerns, I cannot in good conscience support this bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today is the first of 12 essential steps that the House Appropriations Committee will take to restore strong, responsible governance under the golden age of the Trump administration. You know, just this past weekend, Missouri's own 509th Bomb Wing and the 131st Guard Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base in my district demonstrated the vital role that our B-2 long-range strike force plays in preserving national and international security. Drone warfare between Ukraine and Russia has shown just how vulnerable strategic assets can be. This bill emphasizes the importance of modernizing and hardening our infrastructure for the world's most advanced air wings, such as the B-21 Raider. Our greatest asset, though, is not our aircraft. And I think the ranking member would agree it is our people. This bill makes bold strides to improve the quality of life for our service members and their families. It expands child care options. It enhances access to tutoring for children of fallen and disabled veterans. And it supports the daily needs of the men and women who wear the uniform. Access to a VA facility is not a reality for some of our rural veterans. I hear this each and every day out in my district, 24 counties southeast of Kansas City. This bill, though, ensures that they are not forgotten. We increased access opportunities by increasing the funds available for community care. And in a powerful act of bipartisanship, we are strengthening the Veterans Crisis Line. When a veteran calls, someone must answer. Increased staffing and resources will help ensure that support is there each and every time. Mr. Chair, our veterans fought for us. It is time that we fight for them. This bill does that, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, a vote to support our veterans. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly agree with the gentleman from Missouri if the Trump administration under Elon Musk's DOGE effort hadn't actually fired employees and interrupted the ability of employees of the Veteran Suicide Crisis Line from actually doing their job. And we have no idea how many people lost their lives as a result of that interruption in service. So I would love to agree with the gentleman, but unfortunately the facts on the ground actually reflect that they do not share the same commitment that we do to ensure the safety of our service members and making sure that we look out for them. And with that, I yield 5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, the distinguished ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
I thank the ranking member for yielding. I want to thank all of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee staff, both sides of the aisle, for their work, and in particular, Farouk Ofaso and Tyler Coe. I'm opposed to this bill, which will transfer billions of taxpayer dollars to private hospitals and clinics, leading to longer wait lines, poorer communication and coordination, a diminished quality of care for our veterans, and higher costs for taxpayers. This is the step toward privatization of the Veterans Administration, because if you hollow out the Veterans Administration, if you make it impossible for people to be able to access their benefits, then they say, well, we can't trust the VA. And then they'll move in the direction of privatization, and that is where this administration wants to go. This bill would worsen the quality of life for service members and their families while putting veterans' safety at risk. While our military faces massive recruitment challenges, the bill underfunds military construction by nearly $1 billion, hurting our recruitment and retention, undermining our military readiness by making it harder to keep guns out of the hands of those legally barred from holding them. This bill endangers veterans' safety. The bill leaves military installations, service members, and their families vulnerable to climate change and worsening natural disasters by failing to include dedicated funding to strengthen our military installations against these threats, or to help them recover from past disasters. Defense leaders, including during President Trump's first term, have warned of the danger that climate change poses to our military, and the tens of billions of dollars in damage to military installations from recent severe weather reinforces their point. Former Secretary James Mattis, he warned that climate change threatened American interests and our defense assets around the world, and said climate change is, and I quote, a challenge that requires a broader whole-of-government response. This bill attacks women veterans, who are the fastest-growing group served by the Department of Veterans Affairs, with a policy rider that limits abortion access and prohibits abortion counseling. The women who volunteer to serve and defend our nation, to protect Americans' sacred rights and our freedoms, should not come home to find that their medical care and family planning decisions being made by anyone other than themselves, their families, and their doctors. These riders do nothing but put us on a path of partisan division. It will make it more difficult to come to an agreement on full-year bills that can actually become law. Ending fiscal year 2025 with an unprecedented full-year continuing resolution was a missed opportunity to invest in our veterans and in our service members. We should be working towards a bipartisan bill that can actually pass this year. And finally, the bill undercuts our commitments to our military partners. The Trump administration has already done a masterful job at alienating America on the world stage, turning our back on our closest allies. This bill goes even further. It underfunds NATO, the infrastructure, by almost $200 million. It undermines the infrastructure projects of our own troops in Europe that they're relying on. Our credibility as a national security partner has been trashed by this administration, and now it is not time to retreat from our alliances even further. The majority may suggest that they are supporting veterans' needs with this bill alone, but we all know that it does not contain all the programs the most vulnerable veterans depend on. Programs and services, food assistance, education, health research, which this administration has illegally frozen and dismantled, and which their budget decimates funding for, support veterans around the country. Losing that support means abandoning our responsibilities and our promises to our nation's veterans. While I am glad that the Democrats on the Appropriations Committee were successful in shaming our colleagues across the aisle into amending their original bill to include advanced funding for the PACT Act, this bill still fails too many veterans in too many ways. So I cannot support it, and I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Reserve the balance.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is now controlling the time for the majority and is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Cole.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank my good friend Judge Carter for yielding me time. I rise today in support of this important piece of legislation. Prioritizing veterans and troops says everything about our values, and that's exactly what this first FY26 appropriations bill does. The Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Act is a testament to caring for those who selflessly worn America's uniform, their families, and the defenders who follow their path of service. We meet this mission not only in words of gratitude, but in policies that support them. This legislation provides full funding for health care and benefits for our nation's veterans and implements an advance for the Toxic Exposure Fund. This marks enhanced investment under President Trump, which is also reflected in critical mental health initiatives and work to fight homelessness. It devotes funding to improve quality of life, including child care and housing resources for military families who help carry the weight of their loved one's service. And it reaffirms our commitment to peace through strength by providing for military base infrastructure and key deterrence efforts in the Indo-Pacific. It also honors our heroes, ensuring the preservation of national military cemeteries and memorials. With this legislation, our obligations to our armed forces, past and present, and our security are upheld. A vote yes is a vote to put our veterans, military families, base readiness, and America first. I thank Chairman Carter for his hard work on this measure, and I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting it on final passage. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas
I
reserves.
reserve.
Reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished ranking member of the Agricultural and Rural Development Subcommittee, and my dear friend.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my continued and resolute opposition to the FY26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill in its current form. I represent a district that is home to Robins Air Force Base, Fort Benning, and Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany. These installations are more than just military sites. They are the backbone of communities where service members live, raise families, and eventually retire to continue serving in civilian life. Because of this, I have a deep and personal understanding of the needs of our service members, veterans, and their families. I can say unequivocally that this bill fails them. Our veterans deserve better. Our military families deserve better. Frankly, all of us deserve a bill that reflects our shared commitment to the men and women who wear and have worn the uniform. This national defense is not just about weapons and strategy. It's about people, and this bill, as currently written, does not prioritize the needs of our people. Instead, it's laced with ideological provisions drawn from Project 2025, prioritizing political ambition over the well-being of those who have dedicated their lives to serving this country. Let me be clear. Health care for veterans should not be an ideological battlefield. Yet this bill accelerates the shift to privatized care at a time when we should be investing in the VA system itself. Veterans overwhelmingly want to be treated in VA hospitals and clinics, facilities tailored to their unique needs and staffed by professionals who understand the physical, emotional, and psychological costs of service. Instead of fortifying these institutions, the bill undermines them. Community care is an important tool, but it must remain just that, a supplement, not a substitute. Veterans should only be referred to community care when the VA cannot meet their needs, not as part of a systematic effort to privatize the entire system. Occam's razor reminds us that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. And here, the simplest explanation for this unprecedented increase in outsourced care is a broader goal to dismantle the VA system itself, aligning with Project 2025's dangerous objective to privatize veterans' health care. The consequences of this cannot be overstated. Equally troubling is the underfunding of military construction, particularly housing and child care. These are not luxuries, they're necessities. A stable home, quality child care, these are foundational to military readiness. When we fail to provide for the families of our service members, we degrade morale, retention, and focus. We cannot expect excellence from our armed forces if we do not support the very people who make excellence possible. This bill does not build trust, it erodes it. And trust in our government and our institutions and our promises is what holds the fabric of this nation together. This legislation should be a reflection of our values, should speak to our priorities. It should say to every service member, veteran, and military family, we see you, we value you, we will not let you down. But instead it cuts where we should invest, it deregulates where we need oversight, and perhaps most egregiously, it sows division where we desperately need unity. This is not a partisan issue, it's an American issue. And we must rise above ideology to meet this moment with courage and clarity. I urge every one of my colleagues, especially those who may view this bill as just another line item, to pause and consider the real impact these decisions have on the people we're sworn to serve. Let their needs, not political blueprints, be our North Star today. We must do better. With that, I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, Mr. Calvert.
The gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriation Bill. It is fitting that the appropriations bill to come to the House floor this year is one that fulfills our highest priorities, honoring our commitments to those who have served and are currently serving in the United States military. This bill delivers on our promises by fully funding veterans' health care programs and fully funding veterans' benefits and VA programs. This bill addresses critical infrastructure needs for our men and women in uniform. To address deficiencies in the military barracks identified by GAO and others, the bill includes a $75 million increase. There's also a $75 million increase for child development centers on military bases to improve the quality of life of many military families. In closing, I want to thank my colleague, Judge Carter, for crafting a bill that keeps our promises to the veterans and to our troops. I urge all my colleagues to support this important bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas.
And I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas and new member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. Escobar.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to first express my gratitude. I'm excited to be on the Appropriations Committee and to serve with wonderful colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Chairman, I've been so alarmed by the attacks on hardworking Americans by the Trump administration. And we are seeing through the Republican reconciliation bill an historic transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the haves. And it's been equally alarming to see that our veterans have not been exempt from what we are all concerned about. In fact, if we look at the mass firings that occurred as directed by Elon Musk and his Doge effort, 1/3 of our federal workforce is made up of veterans. They've been at risk by those firings. We know also that there are additional firings that are coming. 80,000 VA employees are slated to be fired. And the cuts to health care in the reconciliation bill will impact veterans' families, which is why I was hoping we could mitigate much of that through this bill. And unfortunately, we have not, which is why I cannot support the bill. In fact, Project 2025, which we discussed at length last year, one of the tenets of it calls for privatizing the VA. This bill lays the foundation for that. And we know that our veterans demand, expect, and deserve the best, highest quality health care. And that's why we must do more through this bill and not privatize. There are other components of the bill that are equally alarming. I hope we can continue to work better on both sides of the aisle to improve the care for our veterans. This bill doesn't get us there. Thank you. I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
To the gentleman from Indiana, a member of the Appropriations Committee, just joined us, and we're happy to have him, Mr. Mervan.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member. As an elected official, one of the greatest honors of my career has been standing shoulder to shoulder with veterans of Northwest Indiana. I've worked tirelessly to ensure they receive the world-class care and benefits they have bravely earned in service to our nation. Indiana's 1st Congressional District is home to nearly 40,000 veterans. Every single day, I fight to ensure that the Department of Veteran Affairs fulfills its sacred promise to those who wore the uniform. That means making sure the VA has the staffing, resources, and funding necessary to deliver the high-quality care for the heroes they deserve. It is with deep regret and strong conviction that I oppose this proposal because it fails our veterans. It fails to meet the obligations we owe and those who answered the call of duty. In particular, I have heard the voices of veterans and their families in Northwest Indiana, voices filled with concern and fear. They are worried that the cuts to VA staffing will strip away access to critical care and essential services. We cannot and must not allow that to happen. Our nation made a promise. We must honor it with action and not empty words. I've also heard from veterans who have continued their mission of service by joining the federal workforce, only now to face uncertainty about their future. These patriots who once defended our freedoms now work to uphold the very institutions they once served in uniform. Nearly 30% of the federal workforce is made up of veterans. Cutting staff just doesn't jeopardize care, it threatens the job and the livelihoods and those who have already sacrificed so much for this country. I stand ready for the debate ahead. And let's be clear, these cuts are coming at exactly the wrong time. Instead of reducing services, we should be expanding them in the wake of the Honor the Pact Act. Veterans exposed to toxic substances deserve swift justice. Right now, the average time for processing a claim is 165 days. Over 2.3 million claims have been submitted, and more than 6,000 of those veterans are right in my district, in Indiana's 1st Congressional District. That number represents hope and progress. I have to ensure and uphold a duty of brave men and women who have served, and I yield back my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, the distinguished ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee and a champion of our nation's veterans, Mr. Takano.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the ranking member Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to H.R. 3944, the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill. And unfortunately, I must ask my colleagues to oppose this fundamentally flawed legislation as well. This is not a position I take lightly, and I lament that we've gotten to this point. As ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, I have a sacred duty to care for our nation's veterans, regardless of their race, religion, creed, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, or politics. And to fulfill this solemn promise, I am committed to doing all we can to ensure that we have a well-functioning Department of Veterans Affairs. We must also ensure VA has adequate funding to do the job we ask it to do. As such, anytime veterans legislation is on the floor, I ask two main questions. One, does this bill improve access and delivery of care and benefits for veterans, their dependents, and their survivors? And two, does it provide appropriate resources to VA to get the job done? Unfortunately, despite its price tag, this bill fails on both accounts. At best, I could say that this bill is premature. VA has not yet seen fit to provide Congress with full and complete justification for its budget request. So, we have no clear idea how VA intends to spend the money we would be appropriating to the department. And at worst, I would say that the Republican majority has rushed forward with a bill that is completely divorced from our current reality, one in which VA Secretary Collins is planning to callously fire 80,000 VA employees without regard to the impact on delivery of health care and other services. My Republican colleagues have thoughtlessly rubber-stamped a budget proposal that accelerates privatization of veterans' health care, threatens progress on ending veteran homelessness, erodes access to disability benefits, guts VA IT modernization unless you happen to be one of the president's tech friends, and needlessly drags VA into MAGA Republicans' culture war. This bill contains numerous dangerous policy riders that hinder VA's ability to serve all veterans. Especially harmful are provisions that deny women veterans the full range of necessary medical care, including necessary reproductive health care, which includes abortion care and counseling. On top of that, this bill abandons the premise that all veterans deserve the same level of care they have earned by cruelly and heartlessly subjecting LGBTQ veterans to the bigotry that characterizes this administration. The unpatriotic attack against transgender service members continues in this bill as an unsparing attack against transgender veterans.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized.
And if that wasn't bad enough, this bill continues the harmful Kennedy Amendment rider. This short-sighted, dangerous provision prevents VA from protecting beneficiaries and those around them from potential harm, beneficiaries with debilitating mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, dementia, and bipolar disorder. I urge my colleagues to vote against this appropriations bill, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Dr. Murphy.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in grateful support of H.R. 3942, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for FY 2026. As the proud representative of over 76,000 veterans, as well as Camp Lejeune, Military Air Corps, Cherry Point, and New River, it's my honor to advocate for federal funding on their behalf. I proudly support FY 2026 appropriation to increase the VA's budget by 10% to ensure that our veteran service members and veterans receive the resources that they need and, more importantly, that they deserve. North Carolina is proud to be called home by hundreds of thousands of active duty members of our military and those retired from our armed services. I'm grateful the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act was included in this package, as well as supporting language for the F-35 Sustainment Center and utilities upgrade for future F-35 squadrons. I wholeheartedly support this legislation. We live in a dangerous world now, We had an administration before that wanted to make things about social justice in our military. Military is about defending the rights and freedom of this country, and I am proud that this administration and this Congress is going to support the military in keeping us safe and free. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, my colleague and friend, Mr. Frost.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the theme for congressional Republicans this Congress is putting corporations over people. And that's exactly what they're doing in this bill. Instead of focusing on supporting our veterans, they've added one of the most reckless giveaways to the gun lobby that we've ever seen, gutting the National Instant Criminal Background Check system, the very system that keeps guns out of the hands of abusers, felons, and people who might be a danger to themselves and others. Republicans want to ensure that even if the VA determines that a veteran has a mental health condition to the point where they can't cash their own check, the check has to be given to a family member because they're going through a crisis. Congressional Republicans want that person to be able to go to a gun store and buy a weapon. Most veteran suicides involve firearms. This will deeply worsen the veteran suicide crisis. This does not protect veterans' rights. This protects the gun lobby profits over the lives of our veterans. If you vote for this, you are voting for veterans to die. Don't let them tell you this bill is about liberty and freedom, because there's no...
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Don't let anyone tell you this bill is about liberty and freedom, because there is no liberty in a coffin and there is no freedom in a funeral. Veterans will die if this passes, and anyone who votes for it should be ashamed of themselves. I yield back.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have no additional speakers in general debate, so I'm prepared to close. Mr. Chairman, I want to further add some information, because the Veterans Crisis Line was referenced by the gentleman from Missouri. I want to make it very clear that the Secretary of the VA actually did a YouTube video specifically denying firing anyone from the Veterans Crisis Line, when in reality he fired 24 people who worked on the Veterans Crisis Line. If there was any improvement to the Veterans Crisis Line in this bill, it is thanks to my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee, Ms. Dean, who was successful in passing an amendment that added $5 million to funding for the Veterans Crisis Line, and for Ms. Underwood, who actually added an amendment that prohibits any further cuts from the Veterans Crisis Line. We're certainly appreciative of the bipartisan support of that, but I want to make it clear that we need to remain united in fighting cuts to the Veterans Crisis Line and ensure that veterans have everything they need and a safety net firmly in place. But with all the issues raised during this debate, Mr. Chairman, from the blatant push towards privatization of VA medical care to the underfunding of infrastructure and climate resiliency projects and the harmful poison pill riders, I just cannot, in good conscience, support this bill. It breaks my heart, because we do have such a good working relationship across the aisle with Chairman Carter and myself, and look forward to working together to improve this bill. I know it's possible as we move forward, and I'm hopeful, but I urge my colleagues at this point to vote against it, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm ready to close.
Recognized.
Thank you for having me here, Mr. Chairman. And I want to acknowledge that and ask my colleagues that they support the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriation Bill. This legislation provides critical funding for military bases, provides housing for our troops and their families, and make other investments aimed at improving the quality of life of our service members, and ensures that our national defense needs are met both at home and abroad. We also uphold our pledge to our veterans. This bill fully funds health care and benefits for those who have honorably served. I ask you, again, I ask my colleagues to support this bill. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant